It was the chutzpah of the email I received that really got to me. Last week, I was given notice that my Disney Plus subscription was undergoing a price hike, resulting in a 300% increase since my subscription started in 2019. Of all the weeks for Disney Plus to raise the prices, they chose that one? This was coming days after Jimmy Kimmel's suspension from a Disney-owned network, sparking multiple days of controversy, backlash, and outcry over the ramifications for free speech. Very well placed, Disney. I was irate. I was far more angry than made sense for a couple of dollars increase on a streaming platform, because it wasn't really about the money, and it wasn't even about Disney. I was angry because of the larger implications. Once again, a corporation was prioritizing profits over people. At a time that the internet was declaring that subscribing to Disney Plus was some kind of moral failure, Disney seemed to be mocking me and mocking us. Now, despite my mention of Jimmy Kimmel, you can relax, because this is not a political sermon. Even the fact that I have to clarify that it's not a political sermon is a statement of the wild and troubling times in which we find ourselves. Stepping too close to any political issue makes us all feel a little bit on edge and puts our backs up against the inevitability of conflict and distrust. Every time our phone pings, it's another notification letting us know about some human rights violation, some abuse of power, some impending disaster. We know that media companies quantify their success by quantity of viewership rather than quality of content. Yet we can't help ourselves from engaging, from reading the endless articles and thought pieces. And nothing attracts eyeballs quite as much as inspiring anger, frustration, and fear. The internet has come up with a term for this. Influencers describe themselves as rage baiters, knowing full well that outrage online is a great way to attract attention and bring the ad revenue, fame, and notoriety that comes with it. There may be no such thing as bad press, but there is most certainly press that is bad for us. It's no wonder that so many of us wind up feeling hopeless, helpless, and disgusted with the state of humanity. As one of our congregants so beautifully puts it, whenever she is asked how she is doing, and can't we all relate? She's nodding along as if that's kind of her point. Much like the process of boiling a frog, the moment we find ourselves in didn't happen overnight. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, in his book Morality, the final offering he wrote before the end of his life, describes what he calls cultural climate change. He writes, "High-trust societies are those in which we resonates more loudly than I, where CEOs care for the team, not just for themselves, where politicians act for the good of all, especially the marginal and disadvantaged, and where people in distress find comfort in community rather than being left to suffer on their own. We need to recover the sense of all of us together." Beautifully said, and deeply resonant with our Jewish moral system that centers around community and compassion. But in a society that is all about finding ways to get ahead for oneself, we lose our ability to move forward. The result is what David Brooks writes in very small font. There is always a tension between self and society. If things are too tightly bound, then the urge to rebel is strong. But we've got the opposite problem, he says. In a culture of I'm free to be myself, individuals are lonely and loosely attached. Community is attenuated, connections are dissolved, and loneliness spreads. This situation makes it difficult to be good, to fulfill the deep human desire for love and connection." End quote. What then are we to do when our Jewish values demand that we improve the world, a world that seems ethically adrift? Our tradition offers us the path of Tikkun Middot, or repair of one's values. While Tikkun Olam emphasizes the importance of working to create a more just and righteous world, Tikkun Middot invites us to look inside ourselves to find the values that bring us the most wholeness and balance. In the book of Exodus, we read the phrase that we so beautifully heard sang for us earlier, Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun. Adonai, Adonai, God, merciful and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in kindness and faithfulness, extending kindness to the 1,000th generation, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin. This quote becomes the basis for the Jewish practice of Musar, the cultivation of attributes and traits that we consider holy. We are told that God is merciful and gracious, and we try to emulate those same values in ourselves. If God can be slow to anger, kind, faithful, and forgiving, why shouldn't we strive to bring those characteristics out in ourselves? Now, each of the classic Middot, or Jewish values, is weighed on a spectrum. Our job, then, is to find balance between the extremes of any particular value. Let's take humility as our example. To have too little humility is to be arrogant, to have hubris and ego. We can't go around behaving as if the whole world revolves around us. At the same time, too little humility, and we're left with meekness, self-debasement. That's not particularly helpful either. We don't want to go through life standing for nothing. Instead, we are expected to find a place of humility that both keeps us grounded and allows us to engage with the world with conviction. It's only when we find a sense of true balance that we enjoy the benefit of feeling connected to the divine. The same is true for zeal. Too much zeal, and you go off sacrificing your son to God. I'm looking at you, Abraham. Too little, and you have no motivation to get out of bed. We're left to find the right amount of zeal, a well-calibrated enthusiasm that drives us toward passion and poise. How does that look in the real world? A few years ago, one of our congregants needed help finding a minyan to say Kaddish for a loved one. It took me less than 5 minutes to pull together a group made up of some of you who were willing to show up and help out. None of you needed convincing. You had such zeal for caring for others and such determination to live out the values of our Valley Temple that you were willing to give up your time in order to make sure nobody had to grieve alone. We have built a congregation that jumps at the chance to support one another, even when those same individuals might not otherwise be running to Friday night services with reckless abandon, although you're welcome to do that too. When we say, now is the moment, you know how to respond, and what a beautiful expression of our collective conscience. Over the past few years, Goldman Union Camp has worked to center Musar as part of their annual Jewish education. I might be a little biased, but it was crafted beautifully by the wonderful Dory singer Zoot, who helped to implement a curriculum that uses Jewish value bracelets to point out moments and lift them up, to acknowledge the ethical decision-making in real time. We teach that courage can be found on the climbing tower or in the dining hall when standing up for someone else. We lift up when a young person prioritizes health and wellness, briyut, showing them that taking care of our bodies is an expression of preserving something sacred. We remind our campers and staff about the power of hope, that hope is something we need to cultivate and provide to one another on a regular basis. And Valley has brought some of that inspiration home with us to reflect that which goes on in the summer year-round. We use the Making Menches curriculum, which again you can see far too small on the screen, but if you're interested, I can give you more information. This was crafted by the Foundation for Jewish Camp and allows our religious school students to make the connection between the values that they see jumping out at them from our Torah scroll and the realities of the world in which we get to apply them. It's true that acknowledging our shortcomings can sometimes feel harsh and self-loathing, especially within the context of a society that so highly centers happiness as the ultimate goal. It's not that much fun to accept the places we fall short and strive to be better, but our ultimate aspiration shouldn't be the kind of bland happiness and ease that led Whitney Goodman to write her book, Toxic Positivity. As a therapist working on the front lines of the mental health crisis in this country, she writes, "We've been told that positivity, the key to happiness, and doctors, therapists, and leaders prescribe it regularly. It makes sense that you might question anyone who tells you otherwise. But behind closed doors, my clients, friends, and family have been telling me for years how much they despise the constant pressure to put on positive spin on everything. They're feeling disconnected from their peers who tell them it'll all be okay and to look at the bright side. They know it isn't working, and they're desperate for another way." By the way, I want to point out, did any of you notice, even Goodman, who's writing an entire book predicated on the idea that we're not supposed to chase happiness as the highest goal, she still uses it as the central framework for how we contextualize our feelings. Right there at the beginning, we've been told that positivity is the key to happiness. It's so ingrained in us that even she can't quite lift herself out of it. Judaism has a defined concept for finding balance in the virtues that make life meaningful. The word is peace. In fact, the word shalom shares a root with the word shalem, which means wholeness. When we get to experience peace, we are fully embracing holistic tranquility. I have to tell you, I have always hated the way we teach the word shalom to our children. We tell them that it means hello, goodbye, and peace. But that's a dramatic oversimplification. Instead, when really understood, shalom is only peace. But peace used as a salutation is the highest form of love we can show to one another. To greet someone by saying peace is to say, I hope that our time together makes you just a little bit better and brings the world a little more peace. And when we leave one another, we say to one another, I wish you peace as you go out into the world. Letting the mundanity of hello and goodbye undermine this idea takes away the gift that is looking one another in the eye and saying, I love you enough to offer you peace. Meanwhile, I fear that sometimes we misuse peace in another way. When we encounter global conflict and war, we imagine peace is the time when fighting and violence will come to an ultimate end. We so often think about peace as the kind of messianic goal that we will know peace when all evil is finally vanquished and when all humanity can feel settled and loved. Now look, I'd love for that kind of peace. Don't get me wrong. If it were an option in my lifetime, sign me up. But part of what leads to the discomfort that we so commonly feel around despair and hopelessness is the fact that we've created a paradigm in which we can only find peace at the end of the road. We grapple with this in our Torah study all the time. On Saturday mornings, so often we gather together carrying all of the baggage that came with us that week, whether it was news headlines or personal tragedy. So often, it takes us a few minutes to get started, mostly because I'm ranting on some rambly subject, but really it's because we're coming in with all the things that weigh us down. Almost as soon as we say the blessing over our study, though, we can feel that our learning takes center stage and our opportunity to be together becomes lighter and more intimate. We might not be making the changes that, say, a G8 summit could, but that doesn't mean we don't wind up with a room full of people who have much more peace in their heart than when they entered. What would it look like if instead of turning to the world to get its act together, we instead brought peace into our own hearts, allowing it to radiate out from there to those beyond the walls of our library? Finding peace comes in many forms. It means letting the agitation and bitterness that exists around you not be internalized. It means being present, fully present, and accepting life's blessings and curses without the misguided belief that a little more anxiety on my part can change reality. It means seeing the humanity in others while also embracing the humanity in ourselves. Finding peace isn't something that happens at the moment that everything becomes perfect. It's allowing ourselves to experience stillness and contentment within the context of life's tumult. I find myself returning and again to the words that we will read this afternoon. You shall be holy, for I, Adonai your God, am holy. We strive to holiness when we turn to those Musar values that we read about earlier. But we also are told in Exodus 25 that the way we give ourselves a chance to feel holiness is to create a dedicated space for it. God tells us that we are to build God a sanctuary, that God might dwell among us. Within the concept of the book, we read that this is an instruction manual for how to create the tabernacle, the mobile sanctuary that we carry with us in the desert. Yet in today's context, we have an opportunity to instead internalize the notion of creating space within ourselves, of turning ourselves into vessels of holiness that we carry through our own wilderness. We can't always control what goes on in the world around us, but we can create a sacred space within ourselves to offer the values of patience, of compassion, of morality. We can embody the holiness of the divine by creating a heart capable of creating its own peace, despite all the attempts by the world to force us to be led by our baser instincts. It is devastating to live in a world that is constantly drowning us in sorrows, in suffering, and in struggle. And accepting the reality that we can't fix it demands a realism that can sometimes feel almost nihilistic. But instead, our Jewish tradition offers us the invitation to change the world one person at a time, that at our best, we can be more than the sum of our parts, and leading by example can be far more infectious than when we indulge our worst impulses. At camp, we sing a song with the following lyrics: my own life is all I can hope to control. Oh, let my life be lived for the good of my soul. Let it bring peace. Sweet peace, peace will come, and let it begin with me. We can each be the beginning of a movement towards peace, towards finding balance and wholeness. Tikkun Middot requires one's self to be repaired, and that requires practice. Practice requires vulnerability to acknowledge that we haven't yet mastered our goal, that we aren't perfect just yet. Luckily, we are blessed with the knowledge that everyone in this room is practicing these skills alongside us in their own terms. I might not be able to control the whole world, but I do get to do this reflection and this growth in a congregation where we are there to hold one another with kindness and compassion, where we are comfortable holding one another accountable and willing to accept one another's forgiveness. While we might not be able to fix the entire world, we can work to create a community of peace and of wholeness. And when we do, we get to embody the biblical aspiration that we be a covenant people, a light unto the nations. So let us bring peace. Peace to ourselves, peace to our families, peace to our neighbors, and let it begin with us. Gamar Chativa Tova, may you be inscribed for blessing in the book of life.